Now, here's Michael Smerconish.
Question for you. It is the Tuesday poll question. Should mail-in ballots have to be received by Election Day in order to be counted? Amy Howe, writing for SCOTUS blog about yesterday's argument in the Supreme Court, said this: the Supreme Court on Monday appeared ready to overturn a Mississippi law that allows mail-in ballots to be counted as long as they are postmarked by and then received within 5 business days of Election Day. In other words, according to this observer, and I always go with her coverage in the newsletter, she senses, and if you read the tone at the Washington Post or the New York Times or CNN or any of the others that are covering this in detail, they all seem to be suggesting that the conservative members of the court yesterday seem poised to strike down the Mississippi law that gives you 5 days of grace. After just 2 hours of oral argument in Watson versus the Republican National Committee, a majority of justices seemed to agree with the challengers, which included the Republican Party of Mississippi and the Libertarian Party of Mississippi, that the Mississippi law conflicts with federal law that sets the Tuesday after the first Monday in November as the election day. And then in SCOTUS blog, they report more than a dozen states have similar laws. I looked at the Washington Post coverage. They said Mississippi is one of 14. Okay, 14 is more than a dozen. Also in USA Today, they said 29 states allow for at least some late arriving ballots cast by U.S. service members and Americans living overseas to be counted. 14 have extended deadlines. I guess the takeaway is I don't know exactly what the precise number is of impacted states, but it's a significant number. And this could take effect where the court would come out with its decision in all likelihood in June, in time for the midterm elections. It's also an interesting case insofar as Mississippi is a very red state. So it's the RNC and the Mississippi Republican Party going against a very red state represented in the argument yesterday by a Republican attorney general, meaning state attorney general. Say it more simply, Michael. Okay, the Trump administration is at odds with the state of Mississippi on this issue. Mississippi likes the grace period, and they've had it on the books since the pandemic, 5 business days thereafter. There's also an interesting argument of federalism wrapped up in all of this, and that's, I think, where my next guest is coming from. Mark Schweiker was the governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania from 2001 to 2003. He wrote at National Review with Pat McCrory, who served as governor of North Carolina from 2013 to 2017. We published it in today's newsletter, so you can easily link to it. Governor Schweiker is executive in residence in national security at Rider University. He and I know one another from many years ago and have been united in purpose working for the Flight 93 National Memorial, the Garden of Reflection in our native Bucks County, and it's nice to have him back on the program. Governor, thank you so much for being here. I hope you're well. What caused you to want to weigh in on this issue?
Well, I think, Michael, I had some insight and thoughts from the standpoint of what the states seek to do relative to their constitutional responsibility as far as the nature of election process. As we all know, the manner of elections is something that the states take seriously. It's an important responsibility, and it too is defined constitutionally. And so the idea was to make it clear that while the Trump White House and Congress have, in this Congress, some designs on shifting that and questioning the idea of accepting voter choice by virtue of these ballots that are mail-in ballots that arrive after E-Day, after Election Day, just to kind of level set and help people understand that no one's interested in confronting senselessly. The whole idea is what makes sense. And I'll mention this, that Congress members in the past certainly have accommodated and know well about the nature of mail-in balloting, particularly on the part of military members. So, it's nothing new, even though this yesterday's review in SCOTUS line of questioning seems to suggest that we ought to be looking more closely at this, and does it continue to make sense in 2026? But past Congress have accommodated this.
Hey, gang, it's my pleasure to talk to you about Parks Casino in Shippensburg, right in central Pennsylvania, so close to western Maryland and northern Virginia, close to towns like Hagerstown, Maryland, Winchester, Virginia, Martinsburg, West Virginia. Parks Casino, they've got it all for a night of mingling and action and excitement and entertainment. This Friday, 8 p.m., the Parks Casino Friday Night Comedy Series with special headliner Earl David Reed from The Tonight Show and HBO. Plus, they now have live table games. They're all in with 12 brand new tables across 2 action-packed pits as they celebrate their 3rd anniversary. Blackjack, roulette, 3-card poker, Ultimate Texas Hold'em live, fast and full of energy. Then every Saturday night, live entertainment, live music in the Side Pocket Lounge. You can also bet on all the college hoops action right now. Park Casino Shippensburg, they've got it all going on. Get lucky in no time. Right off Route 81. Visit Parks, PARXcasino.com. You got to be 21. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Can I point out to the audience that not only were you the governor of Pennsylvania, but prior to that, you served as a county commissioner and as a member of the county board of elections. So you've had a very granular look at this whole process. The president seeks to have everybody voting in person and on one day. He's not a fan of mail-in ballots, and he certainly doesn't want to see a process where ballots are counted for a few days after the election by virtue of a grace period. Why do you disagree with him on the substance of that issue?
Well, I'd have to. It occurs to me that the president himself acknowledged that in 2020 he opted to go with voting through a mail-in ballot, so it's not foreign to him. Although I think we all understand his misgivings, given his outlook about what occurred years later in the next presidential election. So, you're right, Michael. When someone operates as a county commissioner and pays close attention to election process and the specifics, the nuance, the in and out, certainly something strikes all of us who had the opportunity and privilege to serve in that capacity. Americans truly privileged and are motivated to vote. And so the idea, at least as I see it, on a practical and emotional level, let's do everything we can to make sure that they have that opportunity. And so, whether it's showing up, the walk-in, or the mail-in, ought to be accommodated. Now, I have to say that there was, having listened close to yesterday's deliberations, there were some truly insightful questions that were raised. But through it all, understand this, that Congress, even the president himself, at one point were comfortable with using a mail-in ballot because it works. I mean, the reality is, if we've got someone in a military installation somewhere around the planet, they ought to have the opportunity to cast their vote. Having said that, I would kind of draw our attention in this conversation to, they're speaking about the federal responsibility and how it brushes up against state responsibility. So what I can see happening is this can go in one of two directions, and we're probably not going to know until the summer. Does the Supreme Court say yes? Federal statute rules as far as federal candidacies, federal elections. In the state, we shall see. I'm not sure if they're going to go that far.
Well, Governor, is there a prospect here for a real blank show of an outcome which would be a standard for federal elections, but a different standard for state elections, meaning that for a federal election, the door closes on election day. But if we're in one of those cycles where we're voting for municipal candidates, then if a state like Pennsylvania wants a grace period, or a state like Mississippi wants a grace period, then they may have one. Boy, that would be confusing if that could be an outcome.
The state positions, local positions, county governments, and so on. Yes, it could unfold that way. I don't think anyone wants to see that kind of tumult and confusion. But and let's also consider this, that up until recent times, most of those folks involved in election administration, with somewhat arm's length in the federal government and out of Washington, D.C., did defer to the states, to the 50 states. And so it was aligned, and we did not have the confusion that underlies your question. So, yeah, I do think we have that prospect coming in front of us.
In your essay with Governor McGrory for National Review, you said upholding the Fifth Circuit's ruling would not bring uniform clarity. It would invite nationwide chaos. States would have to decide whether to have different rules for federal and state elections, as we were just discussing. And then you say, depending on timing, states would have to amend ballot receipt deadlines weeks or even days prior to ballots being mailed, creating confusion for voters and administrators alike. What I referenced at the outset of our conversation, what the journalists paying attention yesterday thought. They think that Mississippi is going to get struck down. You paid attention to the argument. Is that what you think is about to happen?
Yeah, my gut read is yes. A majority of the jurists seem to utilize a line of questioning that suggests that the federal position on this, or that brought by the RNC against Secretary of State Watson, is being considered. Yeah.
And Governor,
let me throw.
Yeah, go ahead.
About we all know that what's happened since the increase in reliance on mail-in balloting, that campaigns really in the fall, they don't kick off as they traditionally did at Labor Day. It's as early as August. People start making choices because the mail-in ballots soon go out, and they begin to focus in on the candidates and their positions and what issues are important to them. In my mind, if this thinking were adopted and forced on the 50 states as far as potentially federal candidacies, that's going to be even earlier in the summer in order to get out the ballots. So, yeah, to me, it seems as if confusion's just around the corner if this is not handled adroitly in terms of the judicial product from SCOTUS and what Congress might embrace. So something that's of great concern.
Here's the way that you framed framed this argument, because you really framed it as you're doing now, but in print as one about federalism. You said this is not an argument for lax standards or indefinite counting. States can and should set firm, transparent deadlines. The question is, who decides? The Supreme Court has an opportunity in Watson to reaffirm a basic principle of American governance. Federalism is not a technicality. Will you expand on that?
Well, it's simply put, the state governments have the predominant responsibility as far as how elections are managed, and the place and the manner. The common
times, place, and manner. From the Constitution, the times, place, and manner. I'll just read from your piece. The Constitution reflects that design, granting states primary authority over the times, places, and manner of elections, subject to limited federal guardrails.
Yeah, and we're comfortable. I think most governors, regardless of their political affiliation, see it this way. And so, if we kind of pose this is in light of that element, with what SCOTUS might produce, hopefully we'll still be able to come together and accommodate mail-in ballots. From what I picked up in my review, they're talking about when ballots are received. If it's after, in Pennsylvania, the polls close at 8 p.m. If the timestamp says 8:06, it might not be counted. That seems legitimate, but I think how we come to a compromise so that there is alignment and one model relative to the acceptance of mail-in ballots will be the crux of this issue and the crux of what the Supreme Court addresses.
We have an additional problem in our state with the lack of, I guess the proper words are pre-canvassing. I think that regardless of what happens in this case, we need to do more in the Commonwealth so that those ballots are ready to go and can be quickly processed so that we get firm answers by election night. I think that's really an important part of the process because I think that a lot of people's confidence has been rattled, both because of things that President Trump has said and because of counting delays that we've seen here and elsewhere. Can I make one other point, Governor, which is that, a related issue but not exactly connected to yesterday's argument is this SAVE Act, where the president, wants to put an end to absentee voting except for cause. I remember in the Commonwealth when it was only for cause that you could vote absentee. I never thought that in my lifetime I'd get to see the ability to vote absentee without a showing of cause. I'm elated with it because I like the opportunity to sit with my laptop at my kitchen table and look at the ballot and make decisions and look things up and look people up. But if the president gets what he wants, there'll be no absentee voting. Everybody will be voting on election day. And if you have a for cause ballot, it better get there by election day or it won't be counted. I don't like the totality of that. I'll give you the final word because I think when more people have the opportunity to vote, we water down the fringes. And I'd like to see more participation, not less. Mark Schweiker gets the final word.
I believe that most governors and most Americans are of the mind that the essence of democracy depends on citizen participation, in particular, voting, making your preference and choices known, and what process-wise, system-wise, anything we can do to encourage turnout and Americans participating in the electoral process is a complete positive. That doesn't mean that we don't have order and protocols. And my hope, Michael, is that in the weeks and months to come that we find common ground, even with SCOTUS deciding that the RNC position was a sound one in Mississippi.
Governor, it's nice to see you. I hope that you're well. You look good, and I hope our paths cross again soon. That'd be nice.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
Mark Schweiker, ladies and gentlemen, former governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.